What's happening, fam? John here from AF Anime. We are back with another One Piece review video, this time for chapter 1038, which is titled Kid and Law vs. Big Mom. And as the title implies, it would appear that the important content of Wano is now picking back up, whereas the last two chapters seem to be a bit slow and somewhat avoiding the important events that are actually occurring on Wano at the moment. So we have a good and exciting chapter to cover, but first we'll get into the cover story, which is also picking up in terms of its relevant story. So as you can see here, it would appear that Niji and Yonji have been captured in Chocolate Town on Cacao Island. But to be more specific, it appears that they've been captured by the son of Big Mom, Charlotte Montdor, who, if you don't remember, is the oddly shaped clown-looking character with the powers of the Buku Buku no Mi, which is the ability to manipulate books. Now, while Montdor is not present himself in this cover page, we do see that Oven and Pudding are present, and it would appear that Pudding in particular seems to be a bit concerned or possibly even a little bit sympathetic for the plight that Sanji's brothers are in. So it'll be very interesting to see exactly how this plays out, if they escape, or more importantly, if Pudding is responsible for them escaping. Whether that is the case or not, I'm actually just excited that this cover story is finally starting to pick up in terms of its narrative. So I guess we'll have more on the Vinsmoke family next week, but for now we'll go ahead and get into the chapter's contents. Chapter 1038 begins with an entire page dedicated to the fight between Raizo and Fukurokuju, and we see that Raizo is completely on fire but still refuses to let go of his paralysis jutsu. Now, while he's not on fire, Fukurokuju is actually surrounded by flames and seems to be wavering in his will to complete the fight. Now, I still stand by my statement in a previous review that this fight really is not very entertaining. But when it comes to this moment in particular where Raizo is on fire, it does have a small callback to the whole Oden situation, while at the same time showing us that Raizo is no chump and is actually the better ninja between him and Fukurokuju. So in the next page, we get an update with Jinbe, who has just completed his fight with Who's Who and is now relegated to saving some of the samurai who are having trouble with the flames. Now, Jinbe does appear to be exhausted, or at the very least having some issues breathing around these flames. And while you would think that a fisherman could put these flames out relatively quickly, we do have to remember that the island is still afloat. So it seems that Oda just kind of wants to remind us that he's still making himself useful and saving lives. And the trend continues for the whole one-page checkup thing, as we see that Chopper is now back to normal and is concerned about Zoro and his well-being. And rightfully so, as we can see in the next page that Zoro is on his back, can't really move, and the Grim Reaper appears to be standing over him, ready to swipe down with his scythe. And as crazy as One Piece is, it isn't really clear whether or not this is a hallucination or some other character with a devil fruit, but it does appear that Frankie, even though he's inside or under the Skull Dome and not really within sight of Zoro, is concerned for Zoro as well, asking how far he went. So I wonder if this is actually a small nod to Frankie potentially having observation haki. So the generalized one-page updates pretty much come to an end when we check in with Izo, who has managed to pretty much clean up shop where he took over for Usopp, Kinemon, and Kiku. He's taken a little bit of damage, but we also see that CP0 happen across him. And when CP0 basically tries to tell him that, hey, we didn't see you, you didn't see us, we're just going to be on our way. And that could have possibly worked had they had not mentioned that they were going after the Straw Hat Pirates in particular. Because upon hearing that, Izo's like, hold up, and then we see his gun click. So it looks like Izo might be trying to take on the two CP0 members on his own and injured, which might be doable since they seem to be pretty worn down by the fight with Apu and X-Drake. So it'll be incredibly interesting to see exactly how that situation plays out. But the next character to get some shine in this chapter is going to be Yamato in the armory. So she makes it down to the bottom only to see that the amorphous fire blob thing that was created by Kanjuro is just about to touch the explosives. So we get to see the hybrid form busted out again, and she uses a named move, which is titled Namuji Glacier Fang, to freeze over the explosives. So it appears that freezing them with her Devil Fruit ability is not an instant fix, because she transforms back into normal and then attempts to bat the flaming blob away with a named Kanonbo based attack called Maharoba. I mean, it does appear to be effective in moving the blob away, but it sprouts hands and reaches down for the explosives. What happens next is we get a panel of Yamato bracing for something. We don't get to see what that is as we leave off at that tense moment to go back to the performance floor for the continuation of the fight between Big Mom, Law, and Kid. So we can see that Kid and Law are both laid out as their pirate crews are begging Big Mom to cut them some slack. Now, she engages in some good old-fashioned trash talk, and before the medical team can run up and save Law and Kid, she uses a name to move, with Hera named God of Lightning Tenjin, which is keeping the medical crew from reaching their captains. So apparently, Kaido has a victory roar. As we see Big Mom looking to the roof, she rationalizes that Kaido must not have finished the fight yet since he hasn't let off said roar. And we hear from Big Mom that she's actually getting pretty tired as she asks Hera to take her up to the rooftop so she can help Kaido put an end to Straw Hat and the rebellion. However, before she can do that, we see Law use his awakened devil fruit technique, anesthesia, and he does this in front of a large and diverse audience in the form of Chopper, some homies, and some beast pirates. And we even see Big Mom give in to a little bit of fear when she says no, not that, as she remembers being hit with the shock wild technique a few chapters ago. Law does manage to pull off the shock wild technique as the homies close in to save Big Mom. But before they can pull that off, Kid comes to and uses his awakened devil fruit to grab the metal and the homie eye beams that Big Mom created and create a large bull. And he uses a named move called Punk Cornadillo to get a unfettered and direct attack on Big Mom. We even get a little bit of a motivational speech of sorts from Kid, talking about how stones can carve through water if they're given enough time, as he believes that Kaido is on his last feet on the roof as well. And in the midst of this semi-inspirational speech, he does mention that he is less concerned with taking Big Mom's head and is now more concerned with keeping her separated from Kaido. And the chapter reaches its end with a suspenseful quote from Law and Kid, both saying that they would rather die than let Big Mom reach that roof. And that was an amazing ending to an amazing chapter. If I had to give this chapter a rating, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's very entertaining, and for as much as it bounced around from character to character and place to place, it still managed to feel like they're building up tension for the overall ending of this whole situation on Wano. And we have no break next week, so we should have a chapter here in about 6 days, and hopefully Oda keeps it up with the good storytelling for Wano as well as the cover story. So now that we got the recap out of the way, we can go ahead and get on with a little bit of discussion about my thoughts on the chapter. Now, for me, this chapter was amazing for a multitude of reasons. The first of which I want to talk about is the tension. I feel like Oda has done a masterful job at certain points throughout Wano of handling a multitude of situations and a multitude of conflicts and giving us just enough information to kind of lead into many of those situations being concluded at around the same time. And in particular with this chapter, I also get the feeling that Oda is trying to really sell us on the idea that just about everyone is going to be spent, exhausted, or unconscious by the time Luffy defeats Kaido, which is fine. It's kind of the formula for ending a One Piece arc nowadays anyway, which is basically just having everyone involved in the arc except for Luffy and the Big Bad waiting on or cheering for Luffy until the fight's over. And another point of discussion about this chapter is the fact that Oda kind of seems to want to put all of the 9 red scabbards in a very precocious situation of either being near death or dead by the end of this chapter. This kind of becomes a little more apparent when it comes to Izo's role in this chapter, which I really like, by the way. But with Izo being severely injured and then taking on 2 CP0 members for the sake of protecting the Straw Hats, I mean, there's a lot to process there. But when it comes to the whole, I'll take this guy, you move forward thing, this one has a bit of a different feel. Like it was very somber how he challenged the CP0 at the end of this chapter. Now, we all know that Oda doesn't do deaths, but Izo might be a character who could narratively fill that role for the Wano chapter. I mean, if it did happen, that would be a death that wouldn't really compare to the Ace death within Marineford, but it would still hit the feels considering that Okiku might wake up to discover that her brother is dead after not seeing him for so long, and then losing his life protecting his brother and Kinemon and Usopp. It could serve as a poetic callback to the Marineford arc and Ace's sacrifice, on top of giving us some emotional moments with the 9 red scabbards and Marco. So I gotta say that the amount of shine and character depth that we're getting from Izo within these past few chapters is impressive, and I'm very excited to see where his situation lands him with CP0. Moving forward though, I would say that the whole Yamato situation, it isn't necessarily a big update. I mean, I suppose it's possible she might have a hand-to-hand combat with this blob, but I honestly don't see the explosion happening here. Maybe she manages to have a controlled demolition or controlled explosions, because she is quoted in this chapter as saying, if all of this gunpowder goes off at once. So it should be interesting to see how Yamato handles this situation, but ultimately it wasn't a real big moment in this chapter. So when it comes to this chapter's namesake, the fight between Big Mom, Kid, and Law, we don't get a whole lot of action. We get a lot of dialogue, a good amount of exposition from the crews and Big Mom herself, but for the most part, we really just get to see a repeat of Kid and Law using their awoken devil fruit. However, the dialogue though is a little bit more important in this chapter, as we see that Luffy and Law might be looking towards supporting Luffy more so than claiming Big Mom's head for themselves. And while this fight is starting to get the feel of it possibly being wrapped up within the next few chapters, there's still a extreme variable we haven't really considered in quite some time, and that is with the remainder of the Big Mom pirates. Like, where are they and what are they doing? I mean, with all the characters on that boat, I can't imagine that Oda brought them all here just for visual aesthetics. Sparrow has gotten his hands dirty, but we haven't seen anything for the remainder of Big Mom's crew. So given the trouble that Big Mom is having with Law and Kid, I'd have to say that the Big Mom pirates, if they're going to play a role at all, almost certainly are going to make their appearance on the performance floor pretty soon. So that is going to do it for my recap and review of chapter 1038 of One Piece. Ultimately, it was an amazing chapter. I'm excited to see where the next chapter goes. I feel like with all the setups that we have here, we should have a good amount of fights and conflicts to be resolved before we reach the final fight of presumably Luffy versus Kaido. So if you have any thoughts on the chapter, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, please like, share, and subscribe for more One Piece related content. I'm John from Adam's Fam Anime, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.